Hello everybody, Josh12 back here again with another video, and I'm here with my official review for X-Men Apocalypse. Yes, I'm finally giving you my very late review for the newest X-Men film, X-Men Apocalypse. Now, of course, if you are keen to my channel, then you know what and why I did not review X-Men Apocalypse sooner. But if you didn't know, basically, a while back, before the release date of the film, 20th Century Fox gave my good friend The Hack a copyright strike. And of course, if you don't know who I'm referring to Paul, I'm calling him a hack because he's just a phony. And they gave him a copyright strike. I was very disheartened by that, and as the man that I am and the rules and principles I live by, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to play your little game, 20th Century Fox. I'm not giving you money, and also I kind of just didn't really want to see it in theaters. So I did not see the film. I did not give 20th Century Fox my money. I did not pay to see the film. However, now that some time has passed by and I got to see the film recently without paying for it, of course, I decided to give you my review for it. So that's what I'm doing today, and of course, there will be spoilers. I will be spoiling this film, so if you haven't seen it by now, then, well, this is a late review, so I'm sure everyone's seen it already. With that being said and done, 20th Century Fox's newest film, X-Men Apocalypse, is the third film in the newest X-Men prequel trilogy, starting with First Class and, of course, previously Days of Future Past, and is a film directed by Bryan Singer, written and produced by Simon Kinberg and with the help of Bryan Singer, and stars Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Jennifer Lawrence, Nicholas Hoult, Rose Byrne, and of course Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse. And of course the film, very ironically enough, if I can summarize it quite quickly, it's pretty much the resurgence or reemergence, if you will, of the first ever mutant Apocalypse as he decides to destroy the Earth and recreate it in his image because he is a god. And that's pretty much what X-Men Apocalypse is. Now, let's start off when it comes to this film, I really, before I continue with this review, need to really put it out there that I am not a hater of the X-Men movies. I do love the movies. I really appreciate them for what they are, what they've given us, what they've done for the superhero genre. But if there is something that is very prevalent within this film, is that Fox, Simon Kinberg, Bryan Singer especially, are very burnt out on X-Men. This film defines that, in my personal opinion. When I go down and watch this in comparison to all the films that came before it, especially First Class and Days of Future Past, it's very burnt out of a film. It's just rehashing the same thing over again. The story is so simplistic, it's paper thin. Everything about it just feels very dull, mediocre, and I know Bryan Singer, when it came to this film in comparison to the ante that was brought with the previous film, X-Men Days of Future Past, he tried to make this a lot more global. He tried to, like the previous one, to it just falls flat because the film is trying too hard to be super big, and I give Bryan Singer huge kudos as a director for making a film so big, but it's trying too hard when it should just be the X-Men dealing with Apocalypse instead of dealing with, the rest of the world, saving it and all that kind of stuff. And even though that is a superhero trait rather that should be a part of this, but at the same time it's just trying too hard to be that when it just should be a X-Men story, and that's what this film lacks very heavily. And that thing goes along with everything else that happens, the writing, the direction, the way the film begins, middles, and then ends off is very dull and boring for me personally as a viewer of this freaking franchise and a viewer of this film. It just did not keep me on board with it throughout the entire reign of its freaking time length, and that's a huge negative towards it. But with that being said and done, moving off of that, my personal thoughts on the story, writing, and directing, the actors that return. We obviously get the previous actors who've established, Xavier and Magneto and Mystique with Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy with the previous films are back in their main roles, and I can honestly say that I was completely uninterested with the previous X-Men members' storylines with this movie. Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy are awesome performers. They're great actors. Fassbender puts an awesome performance in this movie. There's no denial on that. And James McAvoy's speeches are freaking awesome and just amazing to listen to. But their stories are just so played out at this point. They're so boring to look at, and I'm sick and tired of seeing Magneto in these prequel X-Men movies being just such a wimpy little douchebag. It's like, yes, he's sympathetic with the whole Germany, Nazi Germany thing with, taking away his mom and all that kind of stuff that they established with the older X-Men movies, and especially with First Class, but can we move on from that sympathetic Magneto and just be a badass again? Why is he so, like, wimpy and dour and such a broody little bitch? And it's just so annoying, and James McAvoy's Charles Xavier trying so hard to bring him back and be friends again. It's like, after everything that's happened, why does it matter? And plus, the world is so... it's shifted. The events of Days of Future Past are very prevalent with this film, and a lot of that has to do with Mystique. Now, this is obviously the big controversial thing within this film. Not even, we're disregarding like her as an actress and her in the movie itself. Even with the marketing of the film, Mystique has been a controversial thing within X-Men Apocalypse. My personal thing is, her as a story character and her portrayal of the character in general within this film franchise at this point, I don't like. Jennifer Lawrence, she's beautiful. She's awesome. She's a great actress. She's a great performer. But does she really need billions of dollars to just be in these movies? Because she doesn't commit to what she's doing, and the interpretation of the character is so completely shifted because of Days of Future Past to this movie that it's like, that's not even Mystique anymore. This is superhero Mystique. And Mystique's not that. Mystique is a super villain. She's a villain. She's an anti-hero. She's against the X-Men. It's just, why do we have this superhero version? If, Fox and Jennifer Lawrence really wanted her to be a superhero, then she should have never took the job of Mystique, and they should have just gave her a superhero character in the Marvel Universe. But no, she has to be this anti-hero super being of the X-Men verse at this point. And she doesn't even hardly ever... and this is my big complaint with her and Nicholas Hoult, who plays Beast in this film, who they don't even like being their characters. If this prequel trilogy that's been previously established with Matthew Vaughn's X-Men, they should learn to embrace who they are, which they never do with these Bryan Singer films. Mystique doesn't want to be Mystique. She wants to be Jennifer Lawrence. Nicholas Hoult doesn't want to be Beast. He wants to be Nicholas Hoult. If you didn't want to be those characters, then why choose to be in these movies? Why not give the chance to other up-and-coming actors to really establish themselves in these roles by loving and caring for them and committing to them? I'm like, and that's my little rant on it, but that's just how I feel on it. That's just how I personally feel. I mean, I don't care how much money Jennifer Lawrence, come on, she's the female Robert Downey Jr. She has all the money in the world. She's the highest paid, right next to Scarlett Johansson, as one of the highest paid freaking actresses in the fucking business. Put on the fucking suit and just shut up with that shit. Just do that. And the same thing goes for Nicholas Hoult. I mean, like, just be Beast. Why are you this... It's annoying. So moving off of that, let's get into the new X-Men members we get. We get a new Jean Grey, new Cyclops, new Nightcrawler, and everybody else in between. I actually really enjoyed them. I really thought bringing in the older X-Men characters but giving them a new fresh face was a great move with this movie, and they are definitely the saving grace of the film. Everybody else is boring and stupid, but these new X-Men members are awesome. Sophie Turner as freaking Jean Grey is awesome. I thought I was very 50-50 going into the movie with her as Jean Grey because she doesn't really look anything like the older Jean Grey, and of course, like, it's very odd to see like a TV actor turn movie star and not really having any kind of it's just very odd, but she pulled it off. She was fucking great. I thought she was amazing as Jean Grey. The new Cyclops really wasn't completely there and established story-wise. However, I like the fact that this X-Men movie really established him and really wanted him to be something of use for future movies without, taking consideration what they did with this movie. And I think that's a huge plus, because if there's something that all of us hardcore X-Men fans can really admit on, is that the movies horribly treat Cyclops, because Cyclops, Scott Summers, he's supposed to be the leader. He's supposed to be the Wolverine role that Hugh Jackman got with this movie franchise. And no offense to Hugh Jackman, but Cyclops is supposed to be the lead of this, X-Men universe, along with Xavier and Jean Grey and stuff like that, but for the most part, he's supposed to be that kind of factor, but they didn't really ever give that to him, and I do appreciate this movie trying to get him there. He wasn't completely established, but I like the fact that they took some baby steps towards that idea, so huge plus there. But of course, with all that being said, the big honcho, Nightcrawler. Oh my god, he was fucking awesome and hilarious. He was definitely the comic relief, and he was the best part of the movie. I loved the new Nightcrawler. I feel like that was a huge disservice with the rest of the X-Men movies with not having Nightcrawler after his amazing blowout, introduction with X2. And to bring him back for this movie was awesome. And I think the young performer who betrayed young Nightcrawler was awesome. He was just amazing. Every single scene, I wish he was in more scenes. He was just hilariously awesome. I mean, hell, that kid committed to his role as Nightcrawler. What the fuck Jennifer Lawrence and Nicholas Hoult doing? Counting their fucking money? Ugh. Anyways, moving off of that, we also get new X-Men members, not really a part of the team, but of course a part of the film. We get Olivia Munn as Psylocke, we get the new Angel, Archangel, and of course a new Kid Storm and stuff like that, who are part of Apocalypse's Four Horsemen. And I'm not going to bitch about the whole, why are they the Four Horsemen? It should be other people. I don't really care about that, with the exception of the Magneto stuff. But however, they were kind of just throwaway characters. I mean, Olivia Munn as Psylocke, let's admit, what's a spade here? Let's call out the spade. She's fucking hot. That's the only reason to really care about Olivia Munn as Psylocke. She doesn't add anything to the plot. She doesn't create some kind of great storyline. She doesn't have an arc. She's just hot. I feel like the sole purpose of Olivia Munn as Psylocke is for young fanboys and possible fangirls to just fap to. This movie, or at least Olivia Munn as Psylocke in this movie, is fapping material. And that's it. Nothing all. And the same thing goes for the majority of the other characters. Storm is also a waste. I feel like they should have tried harder with her the same way they did with Cyclops in this film, but they just dropped the ball. And Archangel was just a throwaway villainous kind of type character, so who cares about that? And that's pretty much it. That's kind of like my personal opinion on the New Mutants that we got to see. And there was Jubilee. And a lot like multiple other interpretations of Jubilee, she was completely irrelevant, so there is that. But moving off of that, let's get into the big honcho, Apocalypse. Yes, the main villain of the film. Yeah. I really don't know where to start off when it comes to Oscar Isaac's as Apocalypse. Let's put it out there. Oscar Isaac is an awesome performer. He's such a great actor. If there's something that I knew going into this movie that I should like, is Oscar Isaac, because he's so freaking good. I mean, hell, he was in Star Wars, and he was great in Star Wars, but in this film, he is not great as the villain Apocalypse. He's not. There is nothing really driving us to care about him as a villain, and he doesn't really have anything interesting. He's just a very stereotypical movie trope godlike villain, where it's like he wants to control everything and then recreate it in his own image. Wow, what a complete twist. It's just very, very cliche and obvious. And the other thing that kind of begs the question, which is, what can he really do? This movie is very hard to pinpoint the abilities of its characters, and a lot of that has to do with Apocalypse. Apocalypse, there's not really a good way to understand his powers, what he truly can do, because this movie never establishes that, and that's a huge problem, because it's like, when you have an overpowered villain that doesn't make any sense, where do you go from there? And that goes with all of Apocalypse in this film. His origin doesn't really make that much sense. What he wants to do is super, paper thin, but still kind of like, what can you do after that? It's just, Apocalypse was worthless, and I feel like when it comes to movies, when it comes to comic book movies, there's a specific way actors and performers can portray the supervillain of said comic book movie. I feel like there's a bar, or at least levels, of what you do and what you don't do. There's, at the top bar, which is a Heath Ledger Joker. Perfect supervillain. Perfect for comic book movies. A great standing point. Then at the bottom, there's, Eddie Redmayne from Jupiter Ascending, which is just completely boring and nonsensical, and just that's not a villain, that's just a boring character to listen to. And then in the middle there's Jim Carrey's Riddler, and then everything else between, monsters and creatures and stuff like that, vampires, stuff like that. Oscar Isaac is in the world of Eddie Redmayne. He's like, just the way he speaks is boring and mundane. He talks very pretentious like about how he's going to recreate the world. And then when something happens and big, he gets very loud because he's doing something important with this over-exaggerated computer voice that makes me sound cool even though I'm not saying anything cool. That's basically Oscar Isaac as fucking Apocalypse, and it's just boring. It's boring to look at, boring to listen to, and just completely irrelevant, which is sad because Oscar Isaac is a great actor and they completely misused him, which is sad. But again, there is some saving graces, a lot like the New Mutants that we got in this movie, and that has to do with the Quicksilver cameo. Yes, let's get into the Quicksilver stuff. Now, I know a lot of people are bitching on this. Like, a lot of people are like, he was too overpowered. Like, in this movie, all the characters are overpowered. So, like, let's get over it. But, as it stands, Evan Peters as Quicksilver is the best Quicksilver. No offense to all the Avengers Age of Ultron fans, but, like, you have to call it as it is. He's the best, and he's fucking phenomenal. He made Days of Future Past so fucking enjoyable and awesome. And this scene that he has in this film is magnificent to look at. I'm definitely 50-50 as to which one was better. I definitely have to watch Apocalypse a lot more to really come up with that judgment. But he was so freaking awesome. He was just a great cameo and a great sequence in the movie itself. And I think at this point in time, moving forward with the X-Men, or at least the Marvel Fox movies, if there are things to look forward to in these movies, is number one, Deadpool, because Deadpool is fucking awesome, and Quicksilver. Those are the only two things to look forward to in these Fox Marvel movies moving forward in the wake of Hugh Jackman Wolverine. And by mentioning Hugh Jackman Wolverine, he does have a cameo with this film. They have this really weird sequence that really doesn't add anything to the plot of Apocalypse, but overall has this Weapon X side mission story that happens within the whole Apocalypse scenario, and I freaking liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, granted, yes, it adds nothing to the plot of Apocalypse, but it was pretty cool to see Wolverine in there, and I feel like Wolverine in this film, who really does nothing other than just be Berserker Wolverine with the really cool, like, tech helmet and stuff from the Weapon X project, was probably the best looking Wolverine we've seen yet, because he just looked awesome. I mean, the hairstyle, the whole wacky stuff, he just looked fucking cool. It's just a huge pleasure to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in these movies, even in the shitty movies. It's just fucking phenomenal to see him there, so huge plus there. But with all that being said and done, this film is just a boring film to me. I really, looking back at it, I think, no offense to Paul, but I like the fact that things played out the way they did, because I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't see this film in theaters, or at least pay to see it in theaters, because this film was just, I don't want to say it's the worst X-Men film out of the franchise, but it definitely didn't add anything, and it was mostly just a boring, mundane thing. The action looks cool, but it's so obviously 3D rendered. There's so much CGI sequences that just come off as obvious 3D CGI sequences. Apocalypse is a terrible villain. None of the old actors bring anything new to the table other than just good performances but horrible storylines. And the New Mutants are cool, but other than that, there's not really anything else that brings this X-Men movie home or drives it home to bring great pleasure to moviegoers. There's not really anything here that makes me go like, oh, that was awesome like First Class. Oh, that was awesome like Days of Future Past. No, this is just a boring movie. I feel the best way I can put it is that when I was watching X-Men Apocalypse, I didn't feel like I was watching a movie. I didn't feel like I was watching a Bryan Singer film. It kind of felt like I was watching a cartoon series, which I feel like makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because Bryan Singer, at least with this film and maybe with most of his films, but mostly this one, is heavily inspired by the X-Men animated series, and this film defines that, which is like, this movie feels less of a great original comic film, or at least a great film to add to the franchise that's previously established, and just feels more like a cartoon of its former self. I mean, like, it's just completely, it felt like a season to a cartoon series. And that's practically what X-Men Apocalypse is. It's very uninspired. It doesn't feel anything new. It doesn't feel fresh. It doesn't feel like something that progresses this franchise forward. It just feels like a cartoon. And as great as it is because of how amazing the X-Men cartoons are, that isn't really right for the context of a movie franchise that's previously established, especially the one that's in the context of First Class, Days of Future Past, and with this movie. And at the end of the day, all I really want out of this franchise is to really see something new. I don't want to see another movie with Fassbender having some overly sympathetic plot, James McAvoy, Xavier trying so hard to get him back, Jennifer Lawrence being Jennifer Lawrence, and Rose Byrne being there just because, you know, she's there. I mean, she's practically just the Lois Lane, Amy Adams of this fucking X-Men franchise, and it's just boring. Yes, we have cool stuff like visuals and New Mutants to look at, and the epicness that is Hugh Jackman Wolverine and an awesome Quicksilver sequence, but other than that, that doesn't make the entire movie amazing. That just makes certain sequences within the movie amazing, and that's just it. The whole movie, it just falls flat for me. It's very mundane, mediocre, and boring. And out of all the movies, this one definitely goes down as the most boring. I don't really see it being the crappiest. I still feel like Last Stand and Origins are a little worse than this movie. But this one just felt like, okay, can we move on to the next scene? Can we move on to the next scene? It just felt like just boring. And the best way I can sum up this movie is is an inside joke that happens within the movie itself, which is when the characters go out and see Star Wars Return of the Jedi, and they start debating about trilogies and which movie's the best within the trilogy. They're saying, oh no, Empire's better, A New Hope is better. I think the best thing to sum up X-Men Apocalypse, especially in the context of its prequel X-Men trilogy, which is the third one is definitely the worst. Sophie Turner as Jean Grey makes the joke of like, well, at least we can all agree that the third one in the trilogy is always the worst. And that's pretty much the best way to sum up this movie. X-Men Apocalypse is the worst out of this trilogy. At First Class was amazing. Days of Future Past completely changed the game. And now we have frickin' this movie, which is really nothing at the end of the day. And all I really want to see out of this franchise moving forward is the X-Men finally being the X-Men. I know Simon Kinberg was like, oh no, we're going to do 90s X-Men now. It's like, look, just give us the true X-Men and then go on a story journey / mission with that X-Men. You know, I'm sick of this prequel shit. I'm sick of this trying to be like the Bryan Singer movies. It's like, I think this movie has shown us that these creators are burnt out and we need new blood. We need some new people attached to these projects to really bring in a new audience, kind of similar to what Fox did with Deadpool. Those were people who were new, they freaking had a passion for Deadpool, and they give us an amazing content. They need to do the same thing with X-Men, or at least give it away to Marvel, because, you know, this is a movie that defines where can we go from here? And really, we're just doing the same thing kind of over and over again. You know, here's Hugh Jackman's origin again a billion times. Here's another Quicksilver sequence. Here's another characters here's the Phoenix Saga again. We're going to fuck it up for you. You know, here's another uber powerful character where, you know, it's just, give us something new, give us something fresh, give us the X-Men. I want to see Charles Xavier as Charles Xavier, teaching his students. I want to see Wolverine, Beast, Jean, freaking Cyclops, Angel, Nightcrawler in a team together, Iceman in a team together and going on missions. I don't want to see this fucking love triangle bullshit anymore. I don't want to see another Wolverine origin. I don't want to see none of that shit. I just want to see the X-Men be the X-Men. I don't want this second-rate Avengers X-Men. I want the X-Men. And that's something that's heavily lacking with these movies as of late, especially with this one. So, at the end of the day, I know I've been overly critical with this film, but I am a fan of the Fox Marvel Universe, and I have been a fan of the X-Men movies that's come out previously. But this one, even though it does have solid performances, really cool sequences, it's just boring at the end of the day. It's nothing really new, and it's a second-rate Avengers film, and it's a freaking facade X-Men film. It's Avengers, but not really. And they try to be the X-Men, but you have to wait for the next one to see it. And, you know, like I said, Jean Grey put it up right in the movie itself. The third one in the trilogy always sucks, and that's all we can agree with. But with that being said and done, my final verdict for X-Men Apocalypse, has to be a solid 5 out of 10. I was very disappointed with this film. It was very boring. I found myself falling asleep majority of the film. It's just very uninteresting of an X-Men film, and that's sad, but that's all I really can say. I know I've been overly critical, but that's just the best way I could put it. It's a 5 out of 10. There's nothing really amazing here. But let me know what you personally think in the comment section below. Overall, that's all I can really say. I pretty much summed up everything about this film that I really like, kind of like, and just really don't like at all. And I really want to see something new out of this franchise. Or if they're not going to give us any of that, then just give us Deadpool movies and let Marvel deal with X-Men. That's really all I can say about that. But with that being said and done, let me know what you personally think in the comment section below. I definitely can say that thank God I didn't see this in theaters because this was a boring film. But let me know what you think. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section below. And let me know your personal thoughts on the future of the X-Men franchise. And of course, X-Men TV shows that might come up. And whether or not you'd like to see Bryan Singer continue his X-Men franchise or let someone else new come in. Or just let Marvel have it. Let me know what you personally think about that in the comment section below. But that being said and done, shameless plug time. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JohnContrell. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. I hope you guys enjoyed. And this has been John 12.